and weary of Morgaine's endless plans to assert her dark order on them all. A weary and old king. She worked ceaselessly to overthrow him with her black arts. Everything around him was crumbling. Everything he knew and loved was either smashed or stolen. Most of all, he was weary of having to make decisions alone where Merlin once would advise him. But he would never cease to resist her monstrous duplicity. He had smelt the lake before he saw it. The lake on whose banks the Pendragon had once defeated Vortigern the usurper. On the Isle of Apples, away from the world, the willows were burgeoning into new leaf. Avalion in springtime. Yellow flags grew among the rushes at the waterside. He saw them fluttering like battle standards as the three women settled him onto a pallet constructed from linen and spear shafts. The prophecy was familiar, but the outcome either eluded him or he refused to remember. Bedivere stood watching nearby, his handsome head bowed to hide his tears. Beyond him, along the bank, a group of local peasants stared, uncomprehending, by their rough huts of wattle. Now the women were loading the king into the boat. His chest was tight and wet inside the dead armour, and he began to cough, feeling a trickle run down through his beard. He moved his hand against his side and shuddered. My sword! Excalibur! Surely it could not have left him now. Excalibur! Why did they not listen? Merlin would have listened. Queen Celisette of Lyons leaned in over him to wipe away the blood. My sword! I must have it, and the scabbard. She nodded gravely to Bedivere, who had drawn closer on the bank. The king heard his faithful young knight pounding away into the distance. It will come, said the queen. Mist drifted across the sky overhead. Or was it smoke from the battle? A full minute passed before the king realized that the boat was moving away from the shore. But the queen had given her word. The sword would come. The gentle rhythmic swish of the boat's fins as it paddled over the lake eased his mind. The mist closed in, and the king scarcely noticed as a shimmering dome rose like a bubble around the boat's occupants. It sank slowly beneath the surface of the lake, and the light around it deepened into a water-dappled green. It seemed to the king that he was sinking down a great well. And then the well became a tall tower with walls of water lifting high above him. They glittered and streamed with rising columns of tiny bubbles. He began to be afraid. He dared not move or breathe for fear that one tiny disturbance would bring the walls cascading down upon him in a torrential flood of retribution. This was a trap. Some hateful witchery of Morgaine's devising, like that with which she, in the guise of Nimue, had thought to entomb Merlin in the ice forest beneath Broceliande. Yet, while the king lived, all those days of chivalry were not dead. He could rebuild his world again. He had fought alone against worse odds than this, and battled worse monsters. And everything that Merlin had taught him as a boy, everything the aged wizard and counsellor complained that he had forgotten, was coming back to him, clear and fresh as the air after a storm. The son of the Pendragon would return. It had been foretold. He could fight alone again. The high walls of water above him teetered in and blocked the light. Plunged into darkness, he cried out again for his sword. A new but dim light appeared from the side. The king managed to raise himself, but the pallet on which he lay lurched as the queens lifted it from the dry-docked boat. He watched the light approach as they neared its source, until they finally emerged into a wide and familiar hall. The dark, glossy walls rose high into the gloom. He could make out arrays of heraldic devices along the consoles that lined the wide floor. The solemn tranquility of the place was almost tangible. It had been genetically designed to be so. It should have been like coming home. A single shaft of light fell from the roof and illuminated a black slab of obsidian like an altar at the center of the hall. There was a figure standing in front of the slab, silhouetted against the light. As the king's cortege crossed the floor, their footsteps echoing back at them, the figure stretched out its arms in greeting and stepped backwards into the pool of light. The king caught his breath in disbelief. Merlin.